of approving the July 8th meeting minutes? Aye.
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 Aye. No roll call, huh? That's good.
In case you haven't noticed, like I'm not exactly. All right, anybody against it? Okay,
Sorry.
the motion carries unanimously.
Jeff, who seconded it?
Michael Wood
Michael Wood.
from Barry Board of Selectmen.
Sorry, I got logged off there for a second.
Okay, next. There are some recent safety measures that have been taken at the prison camp. I think this is up to you guys at the DCR. Do you want to address that, please?
Sure, I'll talk about it a little bit. So there's a recent initiative at EEA and specifically at DCR to identify sites that pose a public safety risk. And there's some funding involved to try and address some of these safety concerns. And one of the sites on that list was the prison camps, some of the safety concerns that I think I've expressed previously. So the initial phase of that program was to go out and essentially post signs to alert the public to the potential hazards of these sites. So that's what we did. So essentially it's several signs in front of the root cellar, and then also some snow fencing and signage around that. I call it the basement. It's sort of that underground structure that has some holes in the top.
Is that the barn or is that the old
Root
barn?
cellar.
Well, there's the root cellar, but then if you're standing looking at the prison cell to the left, there's this very low structure, long, it's sort of underground. I think it was a steam tunnel or some sort of.
Okay, that has the holes in it?
That has the holes in it.
Yes,
Right.
okay.
So we put some fencing and
Okay.
signed around that because again, it is potentially hazardous to the public. So that was, again, that's sort of the first required step for this EEA project, was to go out and make those signs and fencing visible to the public.
Is the tank also fenced off, the one between the prison block and that root cellar? There was a separate underground tank with a hole in it?
It's right next to that.
Root cellar?
Yeah, yes, that's all sort of
All
in that
one,
same.
okay.
Yep.
What about the hole in the roof of, what is it? The one where you want to put the metal gate, you know, the one that you can actually, oh, that is the root
That's
cellar.
the root
Okay,
cellar. Yeah.
so, okay, there's a hole, there was a hole at the top of it, and that's the one you're fencing off, I assume.
No, there's no fence at the top. There's a fence preventing people from going inside the root cellar.
Okay,
But you're right that there are structural issues with, you know, a number of those things out there. So.
okay.
Any other questions for Dan?
So Dan, are there future phases of the effort that you're planning?
So the next thing that's currently in the pipeline is we are in the process of hiring some structural engineers to try and go out and do an actual assessment of these structures, identify their condition, what the future condition might look like, you know, what would happen if you didn't do anything, you know, what could you do to stabilize. So, you know, we have engineers on staff, but not structural engineers. So we want to make sure we've clearly identified all the potential problems associated with these features. So that's the next phase. And again, was mentioned before the meeting started, there was a recent discussion with the town, Rutland Town Historical Commission, on sort of other plans in the works to do some things out at the prison camps. I think, I assume that Jeff's probably going to summarize that.
Question, Dick Williams here. Dan, are you gonna bring up the grinders and clean up around the place? I thought that was gonna be done a couple of years ago.
That did come up with our meeting with the town of Rutland, sort of cleaning up some around some of the foundations. Yeah, that's certainly something we'll consider doing and take a look at what's needed. And we basically said we would discuss it internally and then get back in touch with the town of Rutland on sort of what our plan would be in that regards.
Are the structural engineers going to be looking at the, like the barn foundation where there are like 2 or 3 foot deep holes? Or are you just going to fill that in, those holes in?
The barn structure. I'm
It
not
looks
sure.
like it was a cow, it looks like it was a cow barn or something. It has concrete, oh, what do you call those?
Stanchions?
Hmm?
Stanchions
No, troughs, concrete troughs.
or the manger?
Yeah, okay, yes. But in between those, it looks like some of the foundation of the barn has collapsed in, and so there are holes that are like 2 feet deep.
Yeah, I mean, we wrote that the specifications was to assess the prison camp, ruins or structures. So we can
And that would be
direct them, we can direct them specific, I mean, specifically, the priorities are looking at that root cellar, that basement structure, the prison cell itself. But we can certainly have them take a look at other potential hazardous locations and see what's going on.
Okay.
All right. Jeff, are you ready to talk about?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yeah, I'll just
take it
real
away.
brief. So, all right. Well, thank you and to the board for allowing me an opportunity. So I'm Jeff Stillings with the Town of Rutland Historical Commission. Just a quick update for your minutes and agenda. I represent the Historical Commission, not the Historical Society, as it said on the agenda. Commission is the town-appointed board. The society is the private organization. So just a quick recap since our last meeting on the topics of preservation regarding the prison camp ruins, what we call the ruins in there. Since our initial meeting at the library, Senator Goby, Representative Ferguson, they were able to secure, I call it a grant, I guess, $50,000 in state funds through the last budget for use in preservation of the prison camp ruins. And the Historical Commission had been granted oversight of the project with full partnership cooperation with the DCR. So that being said, we are in receipt of those funds. We are open to any ideas from your board and the public on how to best utilize that for that purpose of preservation. We are open. We have had our own meetings, public meetings with the Historical Commission on that very issue. We also hosted a public tour of the ruins, which was a couple of months ago in there, where we toured the area, and we also received feedback, took notes, and reported back. So just happy to report briefly on some of the goals that we identified that were important when we talk about preservation of the ruins. And the first and foremost, I guess, piggybacking on what was just reported by Mr. Clark, was addressing obvious safety issues with the holes, and specifically maybe with some wrought iron fencing, if you will, to make sure that anything that might be a safety issue would be reinforced. And we had no objection to that at all. We unanimously thought that the use of informational kiosks would be important to talk about the history on what was there. And I guess the base would be the parking area below the root cellar, where that is kind of the major parking. We would have an informational kiosk, which would show a map of what used to be around those sites, and then have individual signage to maybe a half a dozen or so different sites. For example, the hospital, the jail cell, the superintendent's building, the root cellar, if you will, to mark those sites and use the old MDC photos that are on record with DCR and the Historical Society to maybe put that into some sort of a plastic plexiglass, more of a permanent type marker at those sites, and also use QR codes where somebody could use their smartphone and get further information on the historical nature of what they were looking at. So it would be about a half a dozen of those along the roadside to identify what was there. We like the idea of wooden directional arrows directing people from, say, Whitehall Road to where the sites were. And these are small expenses. The grading off the parking lot to make sure that is upgraded, flat and parkable for visitors in there. We talked about clearing the brush, as Dick Williams mentioned, specifically around areas that are kind of overgrown, like the prison hospital area with, a brush hog, maybe a 6 to 8 foot perimeter around there so that it wasn't so overgrown in there. And lastly, a link to a website, a town administered website on what the historical significance was and what the individual locations are. Pleased to report that this week we had a very informational and helpful joint meeting with the DCR on these initiatives, and everybody is working together on these initiatives. DCR has reached out and is offering a lot of their services, their support, the use of their own woodsmith there who does the signage and things like that, and also permissible use of their labor when it comes to like clear cutting in there. So we are in agreement on what's going on there. We'll be moving forward on that. If anybody has any suggestions on that, I'd be happy to take notes and report that back to the commission. But that's where we are so far. The grant does kind of expire in June, so we'll be looking to move on that sooner than later. But most of our initiatives are going to have to do with signage, informational, roadside, respectful roadside type markers consistent with the signage that you already see in different parts of DCR and state controlled property in there. So with that, I yield back. Thank you for the opportunity to brief you guys back. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Does anybody have questions for Jeff?
I have a
Thank you, Jeff.
question. Oh, who's,
Go ahead, Cindy.
okay, so question, I assume it was the DCR who brush hogged the grass area, right at the intersection of, I don't know what the name of the road is that comes from Intervale, but, so that actually is a much better spot for parking because it's level, you don't have erosion issues, etc., than in front of the root cellar, which is at an angle. I wonder if that might be a better site for parking.
It very well may be through the chair.
Yep.
I guess what our direction was towards preservation of what was already there and not looking to create new areas or infrastructure inside the prison camps. We wanted to work on the preservation of what was already there, and what was already there is that nice parking lot area, but just needed to be neatened up a little bit. And, when it comes to the use of these funds, clean up what is already existing there. But we did not have that discussion with our joint meeting this week with DCR about creating a new parking lot. That would be something that would be happy to entertain, but it just wasn't one of the priorities that I just talked about. Thank you, Cindy.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Jeff. John Root here from the Worcester County League of Sportsmen's Clubs. When my family moved from Worcester to Rutland in 1950, we lived at the top of Sharnock Hill. The prison camp area was a place that I, my brother, and my cousin, and a good close family friend living over on Sassawana Road used to bike too. So I think the preservation of the historical significance of the prison camp is of the utmost importance. Like I said, I have been there since, well, over 70 years, walking around and looking at the buildings. And even at that point, there was some graffiti on the cell block. But other than that, nowhere near what has been done. Although I understand that it's been cleaned up a little bit now, painted or whatever. Is that correct, Dan?
No, there's still graffiti all over it.
Oh, there
I mean,
is,
we-
okay.
we- when-
I
when
thought I
there's-
read somewhere that it had been cleaned up.
Well, when we find hate graffiti, which is becoming more and more common, we do take immediate steps to cover that
Okay.
up.
Makes sense. So again, thank you very much. That's my point of view on it.
Dick Williams, through Jeff to Jeff. Cemeteries are also part of that, wasn't it, Jeff Skilling?
We, thank you through the chair. We did tour the two cemeteries, actually Goose Hill and then the prison camp cemeteries in there. The commission looked at it and we didn't recommend anything to the actual cemeteries themselves other than additional signage perhaps of, what is there. The prison camp cemetery itself does have that monument, that stone and the engraving on there. So that wasn't something that we thought about for the initial expenses of the $50,000. We did talk about in that area additional signage for, like, for example, the Madame Jumel, who supposedly her cottage or cabin was right in that area. Maybe some roadside signage of in this area. The second lady of the United States was born and raised. Something like that, and also, directional arrows in there. But as far as the $50,000 for immediate preservation use, we didn't see anything at either cemetery that would have been the priority. The Goose Hill is already maintained by the town. So
I just thought maybe it needed opening up, the prison camp cemetery opened up a little bit to get to it easier.
yeah, we did talk about that. We did talk about that for some of the access and some of the roads themselves. But that would be through the regular maintenance and conversation we can have with DCR, who seems to be very open towards, using their brush hog and things like that for just regular maintenance, cleaning down of the overgrowth brush and things like that. We just try to concentrate on what, $50,000 should go towards, and with that, the QR codes, the website, the signage, informational kiosks, grading of the parking lot, and the restructuring, the wrought iron and things like that was kind of where we narrowed it down. So I think the DCI would certainly be open towards, can't speak for them obviously, but towards the regular maintenance of the overgrowth brush. So,
All right. Thank you, Jeff.
thank you guys.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other questions?
I had a comment of concern about the overlap of usage in the area. The Fish and Wildlife stocks the area for pheasant hunting, and there's a lot of native bird habitat in the area of woodcock in particular. So it's quite a popular area for upland bird hunting during that season. And the mowing might interrupt some of that. I know it's going to be kind of contained to the immediate structures and might not be too impactful, but I was wondering if possibly you could keep in mind, I know when I attended the Historical Commission meeting earlier, like a month ago, I brought this point up, and Jeff said that he would keep it in mind, but I was wondering if maybe some of your informational signs could specifically address that it is very active bird hunting area. And to keep it in mind, whatever work gets done there, that there is like a multiple use happening in that area.
Maybe
Through-
mention something about wearing orange during hunting season and whatnot.
And
Sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
perhaps giving wide berth to bird hunters and their dogs and that type of, I don't know the exact wording you might want to use, but at least an acknowledgement that it is an active hunting area.
Jeff, you were going to say something.
Yeah, through the chair again. Thank you. Yeah, we did talk about that, Mike, with
Yep.
the last meeting. And I did note that we did have our public tour on a Saturday in the midst of the pheasant season. And there didn't seem to be any real overlap or problems with us being able to tour the area, the immediate ruins and bird hunting that was going on. There was also bicyclists going on. So I think that all the different uses of that area can peacefully coexist, especially during the height of bird season. It would be nice, sure, to have the signs more so at like a bulletin board type of kiosk in there. Hey, this is hunting season, wear your orange. But I think as far as the historical commission goes, our priority is really centered on re-education of what used to be there through those things, not so much the regular updates of, hey, this is bird season. That would probably be something that I would kind of defer back to DCR to have those at their the other kiosks that they have on there, not so much for the historical signs, kind of like mini monuments or semi-permanent monuments that we're going to put up there. So I'm not sure that we would put in, wear orange on the bird season and those type of kiosks. But I think the other coming and going where they have those roofed areas, I don't know what we call them, but they get their little roofed areas where they have their signs. It's more like a bulletin board. That would probably be a good place for that, but not on the permanent markers, I don't think. Unless I'm misunderstanding.
I think we have a question from Michelle Van Riet.
Yes, thank you. Actually, more of a comment to piggyback on what Mr. Root and Mr. Stillings are saying. I happen to live on Charnock Hill Road now. We've lived here for the last 25 years, and we can literally walk across the street to the gate. Not the Intervale gate, but the second smaller gate on Charnock Hill. And I think I understand what Mr. Wood is saying about the hunters, that it was kind of a poor planning to have the meeting on the day with the bird hunting, but there is a peaceful coexistence. We have hiked in there. We hike in there several times a month anyway for the last 25 years. And there is peaceful coexistence between the bikers, the fishers, even that day we walked from our house to the meeting at the site, and we crossed paths with hunters that were walking on the road as well. We had a very nice conversation, and I think everyone does tend to coexist, but I do understand the impact if you're kind of drawing people there. But hopefully right now it does seem like everybody does coexist in there, all the different groups. So I would hope that it wouldn't be a problem in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else for anybody? If not, we can move on.
Could I ask one more thing about that hunting situation?
Yes, Mike.
Does the Mass Fish and Wildlife have a lease or something of that effect on that portion of the property?
We have an MOU, so they have wildlife management areas within the Ware River watershed. So we have a agreement between agencies that delineates those wildlife management areas and what can take place there and what can't, that sort of stuff.
And this area we're speaking of is inside one of those?
I think so. Ken, is that right? Yeah, it is. It's one of the, there are two in the Ware River watershed that I think that is one of them. And then there's another one up on towards Oak Hill, I think.
So that arrangement would continue.
Yes, yes, it would.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Okay, the next thing on our agenda is an update on the controlled burn at the Barry Heath.
So Jeff, I have, so Hermack and Ken Canfield are on the Zoom with us, and
Yep.
Ken is going to actually handle the next 3 bullet items. He has a presentation to talk about Barry Heath, logging, and then field mowing. So I'll let Ken walk you through those topics.
Take it away, Ken.
All right, is everybody seeing that and hearing me?
Yep.
All
Yes.
right, perfect.
Yeah.
Thanks. Good evening. Thanks for having me. I want to thank Dick Williams in particular on the committee for requesting these updates. I'm going to actually be doing the updates on the prescribed burn at Barry Heath on the what's on the agenda as the OCAM harvest, what we call the slash wall harvest, and then also Ware River Fields. So we figured since we were doing a Zoom, a little PowerPoint would come in handy so you could see some photos of some of the things we've been doing. And all these things that we're going to be talking about are part of our land management plan and part of our basically our strategy of keeping our land as diverse as possible, the forest land and different habitats and different types of habitat, so that it'll be a more resilient forest and a better filter will help us protect the water supply better. So anyways, appreciate Dick putting it on there. He was the lone participant in our summer forestry tour. And so he saw a couple of these sites, and I think he asked for this update so that other people would see some of them. So the first one I was going to talk about is the Barry Heathland prescribed burn that finally happened on April 3rd of last year. This has been 12 years or roughly in the making. So it took a lot of effort and a lot of time to get up to this. We successfully burned 26 acres that day with the help of quite a few different agencies. There was DCR fire control and water supply staff, Mass Wildlife staff and equipment. National Park Service was there, and then several local fire departments, particularly Barry Fire Department, brought some equipment and quite a bit of personnel, and it was a good training exercise for them. So you've heard about the Barry Heath before. Just real quickly, the reason that we're interested in the site, it's fairly unique for this part of the state. It's an upland sandplain heathland. So you hear heath and a lot of people think of kind of a marshy area. This is a big pile of sand and gravel basically deposited in between the Kennestowe Brook and the Burnshirt River, deposited there by the glaciers. So it's excessively well drained. There's not a lot of nutrients on top. It's kind of a sterile environment. Historically, probably pretty fire prone, much more so than typical soils in the area. And so that led to a kind of a different community of plants and some insects there. So it's home to a couple rare plants and insects. In these types of sites, because we kind of effectively took fire off the landscape, they're fire dependent to kind of keep them, they're fairly open. They're usually dominated by scattered oaks and pitch pine. To keep it that way, you need frequent fire activity, and with the success of Smokey Bear, and everyone has a cell phone and more flights. We got really good at finding wildfires and putting them out really quickly everywhere. So a lot of these sites, that fire was taken off of the landscape, and so then more generalist species are able to invade, such as like white pine and red maple and black cherry. They're able to kind of get a foothold on some of these sites, and they start putting shade on some of the blueberry and the ericaceous plants that are used to a lot more sunlight, and so we start to lose that habitat. So we've been working to restore the site for a few years now, and working to get it to the point where we could put some fire on the ground. And so we were finally able to do that. If you're not familiar with the site, there's a locust map on the left. It's a little blurry. It's basically the yellow blob there is where the Berry Heath is. That's Route 62 running east to west. So Berry Falls Dam is off to the east, and the center of Berry there is off to the west. It's just south of Route 62 on that stretch, right in between the Burnchurt and the Kennestowe. On the right-hand side is the burn unit map. So it's blown in. You can see Route 62 or Hubbardston Road is right there at the top of the map, the north end. And those are the burn units. Everywhere you see either like a yellow line or a black dotted line, those are fire breaks that we put in. Before you light off a fire, you want to make sure you have somewhere to stop it. So you kind of pre-locate all these fire breaks. Some of them are skid trails left over from logging operations. The one to the west is an old road into some gravel pits. And the rest are all basically mowed fire breaks. When you're dealing with kind of low shrubland, a lot of times just mowing down as close to the ground as you can get, 12 feet wide or so is enough to slow that fire down if you're there holding it with some staff and some water. Those are fire breaks. And then the letters are all different burn units. So that day we were able to burn all of Unit D, which is down in the southeast corner, and then all of Unit E and most of Unit F, other than just kind of the northwest section past that one black dotted line. We didn't have enough time at the end of the day to finish that. This is a 1938 aerial photo of that area. You can see, I don't know what Route 62 would have been in 1938, but you can see the road running through. You can see Reese Hill to the north. And there was actually still structures on Reese Hill at that point. So you can see kind of the black outlines of where the structures were. And then to the south of whatever Route 62 was, you can see the Berry Heath, and you can see basically it was fairly open in 1938. And you can also see there's some pretty good topography in there. It rolls around quite a bit with the gravel deposits. So we basically wanted to restore it close to what that was. This is also an interesting photo we found. This is one of our real estate photos. We have these for all the land that we took in the original takings. The major structures that are out there, generally, they'd send somebody out a week before we took the land and take pictures, and there's usually a guy holding a chalkboard. You can see the person there in the picture has a chalkboard, and there's usually a diagram that kind of shows the layout of the property. And so these are interesting from a historical point of view, obviously, to see the structures, but a lot of times if you get a view, you also get kind of an interesting ecological view of what it looked like. So this photo was taken in May of 1941 on Reese Hill, looking southwest across Route 62 to the Heath. And if you zoom in a little bit, you can kind of see the Heath in the background. That's what it looked like 80 years ago. That kind of shrubland, scrubland. You can see what looks almost like some kind of burnt out snags, like there had been a fire somewhat recently within the last 10 years out there. And then in the 80 years after that, we kind of got overrun with some white pine and red maple and other trees that grew in there. So to get it to the point where we could actually burn it has taken a long time. It took a lot of prep work over multiple years. We did 2 commercial timber harvests, which is the picture on the left. That's Chris Perner's feller buncher there, his harvester after the second harvest. We left the pitch pine, which is the tree right there next to the feller buncher, and scattered oaks. That was kind of the first step. We did some contract mowing out there where we paid a contractor. That's the middle picture. That was TR Landworks out of Connecticut. Kind of a similar machine to what Chris has, but the head on the end of that is not for cutting trees, it's for mulching brush. So that was to knock down some brush and get it ready to be burned. We had to prepare a burn plan, which is a fairly lengthy document that lays out exactly how you're going to burn And we have Virginia Dotre on our natural resource staff did a great job putting that together with the help of DCR Fire Control. She's kind of our burn plan guru. So that took quite a bit of time and had to go be peer reviewed. And we had to get a DEP air quality permit. So there's quite a few steps you have to go through before. It's not like the good old days when you can just light a match and burn a few hundred acres with a couple people. So quite a bit goes into it. And then the picture on the right is one of Water Supply's track steers that we use to mow brush. So that might be something that gets used out at the prison camp. And that's actually in one of the gravel pits on the heath. We had our staff establish and then maintain some of those fire breaks. And that's a multi-year effort because even after we had that burn plan in place, it takes a lot to get all the people there that we need to burn. And it takes, it's very limited by weather. Based on the parameters in the burn plan, you need specific fuel, wind direction, specific fuel moisture, specific relative humidity, all sorts of different things. And we only get limited windows. And then when you get that window, there's lots of places that that are on the list to be burned. So you have to kind of constantly be maintaining the fire breaks because you just want to be ready to go if you get the call to say, it's your turn. We're going to come burn for you. So a lot of work went into all this. Here's some pictures from the day of the burn. I don't know, some people may have driven by on that day and seen some trucks and some lights and some smoke. This is right off of, the picture on the left is right off of Route 62, that kind of landing area where we just moved a yellow gate up there. So you can see all the trucks. The first truck on the left, that's Mass Fish and Wildlife's engine, and all the red trucks are fire control, and there was UTVs there that people brought and a tanker from Ware Fire Department. So quite a bit of equipment and probably, I would guess, 30 roughly trained firefighters there to pull this off. On the picture on the right, you can see Dave Salino, the chief of DCR Fire Control, who came and spoke up at the Barry Town Hall at one of our advisory committee meetings a few years ago when we were kind of planning this. He was in charge of the burn that day. So he's doing the briefing where he's handing out assignments and telling people what the plan for the day is. It was about, 20 degrees that morning. So it was, it was pretty early for a prescribed burn and pretty cold, and took a bit to get it going. But this is the fun part where you actually get to burn, put some fire on the ground. You can kind of see what it looked like out there with the smoke. And on the right, that's how we ignited it with basically used drip torches, which is a canister filled with a mixture of gasoline and diesel. And it's got kind of a stem coming off of it with a wick. So when you hold it down and the wick is lit, it's dripping fuel that ignites and then hits the ground, and you're basically just dragging fire along. And there are people at the fire break holding it there with water and hand tools. And you kind of work off of a break and just keep expanding it. And at this point, we were pretty spread out and sending a lot of fire their way. So it was a very successful burn. We got the results we wanted. You can kind of see some of those on the right. And we were just happy this was the first burn on water supply land in, I think, 20 plus years. So happy to get this going. And now that all the folks have been there and are a little familiar with the site, we're hoping that it will be a little bit easier to get them back. There's more to come. We have more contract mowing that's going to happen on the heath this spring, closer to 62, to get that farther northern unit ready to go. And we're hoping to get another burn done this burn season there. And then we have other sites that we're hoping to get online in the future. Folks may be familiar with the harvest right outside of Rutland State Park on Whitehall Road next to the rail trail. That's a pitch pine oak barren. There's a swath of barrens there identified in our land management plan that we'd like to restore. And that harvest was kind of the first step. There's another harvest that's been marked and sold that's across from that across the rail trail from that, that'll be probably cut this winter, spring, I'm hoping. And then the next step is to move that further north, kind of in between Pine Plains Road and the rail trail, kind of along T3 there. There's a big swath of potential barrens there that we'd like to open up. And as I'll talk about in a little bit, we're also thinking about hopefully getting a burn plan written for some fields in Ware River, so that'll be one of our options for maintaining some of our fields, is to do it through prescribed burning rather than mowing or haying. So that's the heath. If anyone has any questions, if you want to just wait to the end, I'm happy to answer them, or you can type a chat to Justin or to Jeff, but try to tackle those at the end. So the next update was on the agenda as harvest in OCAM. There was a little confusion on our end. There was an OCAM state forest harvest that's may still be ongoing or just wrapped up that had generated some attention. OCAM State Forest is not owned by Water Supply, so we didn't have really anything to do with it. That's the other part of DCR. But I think this is probably what Dick was looking for, because we showed this harvest to Dick. We did a harvest in OCAM. It's pretty close to our field office there on Old Turnpike Road, just a little bit north of that, off of Loop Road, which comes off of the paved part of Colebrook Road, just down from the office. And this is part of a regional study looking at how to control deer in particular, in our case also moose, herbivory, basically trying to keep deer and moose from eating our nice trees that we're trying to grow when we do a harvest, the young trees that we're trying to regenerate. There's a lot of areas where if there's too big of a deer population, it's really hard to grow back trees or to grow back the mix of trees that you want, because the deer, there's so much pressure on that regeneration, they like to eat it. So in a lot of areas, people use fencing. So they're looking at slash walls as a cheaper alternative to basically fencing. So this was a project that we got asked to do by a researcher who was part of a group that Herm's in, looking at oak regeneration on the East Coast. They started these in New York State. A researcher from Cornell has done about 500 acres of these and had some pretty good success looking at early results. But he wanted to expand his study into other states. So this is the first one, definitely the first one in Massachusetts, and I think the first one in New England. There's a couple in Connecticut now, but I think we finished this one before they finished theirs. So this is the location, pretty close to our boundary. On the left there is the locust map. You can see the kind of blackened area is where these harvests are. Our office is right there at the intersection of Old Turnpike Road and Colebrook. So not too far from there. There's transmission lines that you can see. So there's a harvest on the kind of southwest side of the transmission lines, right up against the boundary line. And that's the side that has the slash wall. And then there's another harvest north of the transmission lines that does not have a slash wall. So it's basically for experimental purposes. You have the experimental slash wall and then the control group, or the control, which is the non-slash wall harvest. They're both basically 14-acre clear cuts. And the slash wall itself encompasses the entire perimeter of one of the 14 acres. So it's a pretty big wall. The map on the right is kind of a blown up, more closer view of it. That's Loop. You can see Loop Road coming off of Colebrook Road, which is a snowmobile trail, and people hike it quite a bit. So some people may have bumped into this already. Slash wall is basically just what it sounds like. It's logging slash or debris that, we did these harvests, and then the loggers, while they were there, piled this debris. It's basically 10 feet tall and 20 feet wide. So it's pretty stout. And the wall itself to go around the perimeter of 14 acres is 4,500 linear feet. So getting close to almost a mile long. We estimated there's roughly 1,400 tons of woody material in the wall. So it's hard to get a picture that really kind of shows you the scope of it. We're hoping to get some drone footage of it at some point. But you can kind of, this is inside the wall, and you can kind of see the wall there in the background. We call it a clear cut, but we obviously left quite a few dominant trees inside. This is kind of a view looking down the wall. So if you happen to be out on Loop Road and you look across the transmission lines, this will stick out like a sore thumb. Basically, it's a cost-effective way to control deer eating our young trees. It's cheaper to install than fencing, and there's a lot less maintenance with fencing. You know, when you put in a fence, it's tens of thousands of dollars to do any acreage, and if a tree or a limb falls on it, you know, you have to be constantly kind of patrolling it to make sure that there's nothing breaching that fence, and then repair it when a branch falls on it. With our slash wall, if a branch or a tree falls on it, it just is more slash wall. So it a lot less maintenance. We want it to last at least 10 years. I don't think we'll have any problem with this wall. It's pretty stout, but that gives the trees enough time to get up over the deer, basically. Moose is a different story. They're taller and they can knock some pretty large trees over, but hopefully at that point we'll have the regeneration well established. I should say the researchers were pretty excited about this one as well, because they didn't have any other sites where there's a moose population. And we don't have a big overpopulation of deer on Ware River. It's been hunted for a long time. But there is a healthy population of moose. Our last pellet survey, which are not always a super accurate way of estimating populations, but the estimate we came up with was roughly 6 moose per square mile, which is a huge number. And the rule of thumb is one moose can eat roughly about 10 times in a day what one deer could eat. So, you know, 6 moose is roughly equivalent to 50 or 60 deer per square mile, which you start getting into issues with regenerating trees at that point. So we haven't had a lot of issue in Ware River with regenerating trees, fortunately, but it's, you know, this is something that we wanted to look at, and something that the researchers wanted to look at. So the wall also will provide some habitat out there. I mean, we for years were making little brush piles for rabbits and small mammals and salamanders and those sorts of things. This is one gigantic brush pile. So we've already seen some small mammals using it. It'll release the carbon slowly for folks that are interested in that. A lot of times this material on one of our jobs would probably go through a chipper and get sent to the Fitchburg biomass plant to be burned for energy. Which is fine. That market is pretty volatile and not very lucrative. The loggers are sometimes losing money sending wood to that mill. So this was a way to look at, if that market goes away completely, that we could utilize some of this low-grade wood for a benefit. All those pictures that you see there, we have quite a few cameras up outside the wall and inside the wall. These are all pictures, fortunately, that are outside of the wall. So that picture on the top left was probably a day after we actually closed the wall. We got a picture of a deer. You can actually see part of the wall on the left side of that picture on the top left. That deer was standing there right next to the wall, kind of probably looking at it, wondering what the heck it was. And we obviously have some moose out there. My head's kind of in the way of the bull moose that we got at night. Is part of a research site. Dr. Jeff Ward is the chief scientist for the Department of Forestry down for the Connecticut Ag Experimental Station. He's kind of a fairly well-known expert on regenerating and growing oak in the Northeast. And he had asked Herm if we could provide a site for this study. And so Herm and I came up with this site. So they put in vegetation plots in both the wall side and the non-wall side. I think there's 10 plots on each side where they measure all the vegetation within a certain distance from the plot center. They measured them before we did the harvest and established all the plots. So they have kind of a baseline pre-harvest measurement. And then they're going to remeasure those plots annually pre-harvest or post-harvest. They already measured, this was cut last June and July. So they got in this fall and or this late summer and did the first post-harvest remeasurement, and they'll keep doing that. So we'll be interested to see the results and see the difference, basically where we know we don't have deer and moose eating our trees and where we know that we do have them. And it's not really, as a forester, I'm most interested in the regeneration of trees, but the vegetation plots, they measure everything, all the forbs and herbs and a lot of the preferred species that deer go after first that we may not even realize they're having an impact on. So it'll be interesting to see the results. So just a few more photos of things we got. This is in the harvest that's outside of the wall. We got a picture of a coyote on the top left. There's a buck there. You can see the transmission line on the top right. And then we got a bobcat on the bottom left and a fox on the bottom right. So we got some pretty interesting pictures out there outside of the wall. And then in the wall, we basically the researchers where they've done this other places have seen pictures of every type of wildlife you can think of other than deer inside of the wall. So other animals can get over or through. Birds obviously utilize it. They got a picture of a fox inside of the wall on the top right there. And then we've been in a couple times. I went in once and Herm went in once after snow to walk the perimeter of the wall to make sure we didn't have any deer or moose inside the wall. We obviously swept it before we closed the wall, but we wanted to make sure that they weren't getting through somehow. And you just see small mammal prints everywhere. And actually we saw on the top left and the bottom right there's some kind of cat that was in there. The top left is where it came through the wall. That's actually a portion of the slash wall that you can see with the print on it. And then the bottom right is where I tracked it over, and it had got a hold of a mouse or something. There's a little gut pile in the top left of that photo on the bottom right, and some drops of blood. So it could have been that bobcat. It was pretty small, whatever it was. This is also fairly close to some houses off of Bullard Road in Oakham, so it could have been a house cat. Hopefully it was a bobcat in there. And the top right was actually inside the wall. At the gate, we had put some gravel underneath that gate and looked like a bear print, although we haven't got any pictures of bears on the cameras, but looks like maybe a bear had gotten in there. Then the last update that I was going to give is about Ware River Fields. Dick really likes fields, and I know a lot of other people do too. So wanted an update on the fields. We currently have approximately 232 acres of fields in the Ware River, where we have roughly 24,000 acres, so roughly 1%. And when I say fields, these are either hay fields or brush fields that we're mowing either annually or semi-annually. So we have other open areas, obviously wetlands and roadsides and areas like the heathland. But these are our fields that we actively mow. So we have approximately 120 acres out of that 232 is permitted hay fields. So they're hay fields that we bid out permits to local farmers to come in with their haying equipment and take hay off of them. That saves us some time, and it provides kind of a different habitat. Bobolinks in particular really like hay fields to nest in, and some other nesting birds. And the farmers obviously get some use out of it, and they pay us a little bit of money, and they provide us some hay for construction materials, some hay bales for construction projects and forestry projects that we need from time to time. Unfortunately, right now, the prison camp fields, which are one of the bigger permits. No one bid on that permit. And actually the last farmer who had it relinquished it halfway through. Basically, there's a few issues with that. We put some seasonal restrictions because we don't want them mowing over bobolinks that are nesting. So we have specific dates that they can't mow until to get past that breeding season. Those fields are a little isolated. The farmer had some equipment vandalized out there, and we've had people rip out rocks and drive their trucks and rip up the field. So there's a few issues out there, few reasons why no one wanted that one. So those have been mowed by our staff for the last few years, which is not ideal. Our staff mowed 160 acres in 2021 because the farmer that also has the Berry Falls Dam fields, which is the other big permit, was unable to get to it this year. It was a really wet year, which some of you might have noticed. So that's not real conducive to haying. So they were behind, and I think they had some other issues. So we ended up, the picture on the left there is our staff mowing that, the fields by Berry Falls Dam. I think we waited until like November or even early December before we mowed them to give the farmer an opportunity to do it. But when we mow them, we don't have the equipment to take hay off. And so you quickly, the fields deteriorate pretty quickly, you build up thatch, and the habitat that those nesting birds like goes away fairly quickly. So not ideal to have us do it. Plus we have limited staff. We have basically now three guys running the equipment, and they maintain all the roads and mow all the lawns and do all the weed whacking and mow the dams and also mow all the fields. So the more they have to mow, the less time they have to spend on some of the other things that they do. So that's one of the reasons we're looking at prescribed burning. That's a way where you can take some of the thatch off of these fields and kind of reinvigorate some of the grasses that are in there and improve that habitat if we're unable to hay them. Our farmers seem to be fewer and farther between, and they're not getting any younger. So we have a hard time. If anyone knows any farmers interested in hay fields, send them to me because we'd like to have more people come and look and bid. So
Ken?
Yes.
Cindy Schlenner.
Hi, Cindy.
I have someone who might be interested.
Great.
If you can send me your info, I think I still have your email, so I can send you.
Sounds
his
good.
name.
Yeah, please.
Okay.
I have my contact info at the end of this too. So if you don't have it, you can write it down.
Okay.
These are the 5-year permits, and we just bid them out in 2020. So right now the prison camps is the only one that's available. The other 3 people have. We'll see. I'm not sure what the farmer up at Berry Falls Dam, if their plan is to keep doing it or not. They didn't get to it this year. I'm hoping next year they will. So, but yeah, we can certainly, if they're interested in the prison camp fields, we can show them to them. And if not, we'll get them on the bid list for the next time they open up, which will be 2025. So,
okay.
Thank you. So that is basically my updates. I did want to put up, there's some additional info. This website wasn't too difficult. You can go to the mass.gov website and just search for DWSP forestry projects. That site has a ton of information about all the recent timber harvests and upcoming proposed timber harvests, along with some pictures. It has a nice story map about the Berry Heath restoration. There's some carbon information that we just put up there that you can find. So some videos. If you ever have questions about what's going on with our forestry projects, that's a great place to start. And you can obviously also contact me. I did want to put in a plug for our visitor center. It has some upcoming events. I think most of these are webinars. I heard Justin talking before the meeting. I didn't realize. So the Explore Quabbin Park coming up on Saturday is sounds like it's in person, and Justin will be leading that. So But the one in particular I wanted to point out to this group is this Sunday, the 23rd, from 2 to 3. There's this Discovering the Other Lost Valley. Maria over at our visitor center is giving a talk on the history of Ware River Watershed. So I thought that might be interesting to some folks on here. And that is a webinar. So if you go to the mass.gov website, once you're on that website, there's a search within that website. If you put in Quabbin events, you'll pop up this page and see all the upcoming talks, and you're able to click on those and sign right up. So now that the Pats are no longer in the playoffs, everyone has Sunday free, so you can tune into that Ware River talk.
Tom Brady, the Tampa Buccaneers. Sorry.
Yeah, he's still going. But
I'd just like to thank you for doing this, because I want everybody to see what a heck of a great job you guys are doing. And I'm so fantastic about, below the OCAM office there. That was astonishing just to see that, to walk in there and see that. So I'm interested to see how it works out. I like to hear how the Yukon makes out when they come around. So please keep us updated.
we'll do, Dick. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Yeah, I wanted to go on the forestry tour, and I just had something come up at the last minute. I couldn't make it. But I want to encourage all the other members next time around. It really hasn't, the last few years, it has not been very well attended, and it really does open your eyes to what DCR is doing to manage the forest in the Ware River. So I encourage you next year to attend a forestry tour. Any questions for Ken?
This is Dave. No questions. I just wanted to really thank you for the thoughtful PowerPoint presentation, because if you were to have done this simply verbally without the imagery, I really don't think I'll speak for myself, would have had the level of appreciation that I do now, having seen befores and afters, what the logic behind your actions are. Even the slash wall fencing. If I had driven by that, I would be going, what the hell is going on here? But since you've described it that way, now I can share with anyone that I'm with as to what that strategy is. So I think the more that we, and by the way, there are a number of other individuals on this call that aren't members of the committee, but take an active interest in this. And I see it's just a level of transparency I would really like to see promoted every time these projects are underway. It allows us to be advocates for what's going on. Thanks very much.
We did have some early feedback from someone who saw the slash wall who said they thought it looked like we were trying to raise velociraptors like in Jurassic Park.
Yes.
Any other questions for Ken?
I have one.
Okay.
Is there any impact on snowmobile trails for this year?
Not likely. Do you guys use Granger Road?
On the other side of,
That's
the parallels the rail trail?
yeah, once you get up, I guess you're on the rail trail there, so I don't think you use that. Yeah, no, I can't think of any of my harvests that are sold that would impact snowmobiles.
Okay.
If I think of one, I will let you know, but shouldn't be any. Hopefully we get some more snow for you guys.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ken, if we wanted to get a copy of this presentation, would that be possible?
Sure. Yeah. You can, I can get your contact info from Justin, I guess, and I could be happy to email it to you or.
Yeah, I'd love to share this with the Historical Society, and certainly, once again, I think it provides a level of transparency that, as visual as it is, allows people to understand what's going on.
I think we're recording this. thing too. So if they want to
Yeah,
watch the
yeah.
recording of me give it, that's fine. Or if you just want a copy of
That's even better.
we'll make sure we get that to you.
Thank you.
I have one question, Ken. It has to do with the slash wall. What happens after the 10 years or so? Do you just let it deteriorate and decompose? And
That's the plan. Yeah. I
Okay.
imagine we'll probably, at some point when we don't think it's necessary anymore, take that gate off and just, it's probably 20 years from now, somebody will walk by and say, what's that big mound of dirt over there? But yeah, it'll probably show up on some Google Earth photos and look kind of funny for a few years.
Okay. If there are no more questions for Ken, we'd like to move on. Thank you very much, by the way, Ken.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank you, Ken.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
you.
Appreciate it.
Dick, you wanted to have a bit of a discussion about the Whitehall Pond Dam.
Seeing as how it, I've asked, and it goes back when Steve Drawbridge was with MDC, and he had mentioned about it. So it's been a long time, and I am finding out because I went to the other DCR office on Long Pond, and someday I would like to have a discussion with John and maybe Dan about what's going on with DCR. You have a watershed and then you have recreation. But the Whitehall Pond Dam, that many years, is it something? Because if that fails, the water level will, drop not only for the state park, but for Long Pond. And I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I don't want to see sometime in the very near future we have a problem and people love to come out to the Rutland State Park and they won't be able to.
So I do have a little bit of information for you, Dick. So you're right. As I think I've indicated in previous meetings, that particular dam is under the care and control of DCR State Parks, not DCR Water Supply. But I did reach out to my counterpart in DCR State Parks to ask her if she had any information. I did get some feedback from DCR's Office of Dam Safety. And the information they provided, they said Whitehall Pond Dam was inspected on March 20th, 2019. The inspection reported the dam to be in overall fair condition. The dam is on a 5-year inspection frequency, and the next inspection is due March 20th, 2024.
Wow. Okay.
So that was what was provided to me on the most recent assessment, I guess.
All right. Well, I don't know where it goes. Okay, that's great. I'm glad. It sounds to me like it'll hang tight for a while longer.
Yeah, I think fair condition is not a bad rating for considering I've seen other ratings much worse than that. So,
so have an eye in the town of Rutland. All right. Well, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Dick. Thank you, Dan. Next on the agenda is a discussion about the trails and possible formation of a subcommittee concerned specifically with the trails. Now, I spoke with Cindy and Dave and Brett and a couple other people a little while ago. And it's Cindy, Dave, Brett, do you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, let me step in here.
Okay.
You mentioned a few names. We have some other people here. We have
Dave,
Yes,
you're having problems with your audio.
Is it rough?
It's breaking up. Is it just me?
No, I
it's-
hear it too.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure. I don't have another microphone here.
Oh, wow.
You want to talk about them, Cindy?
Oh, I don't have anything. How about Brett? I thought you were going to do it, so I didn't.
Yeah, that's what our plan was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Brett?
so I'll just introduce the topic. Basically, we wanted to have a subgroup of the Ware River Watershed Advisory Committee that was continuing an effort on trails and improving the situation, helping get to the end of the public access management plan, helping resolve some of DCR's concerns, and in general, a group that's kind of helped coordinate the efforts with user group organizations under like one umbrella associated with the Ware River Watershed Advisory Committee. I think that's in generally what we were discussing.
Right. And this kind of leads into my next item on the agenda is I would like to see us take the lead on some of these unresolved issues, like the trails. I think the formation of a subcommittee would be a good thing. Have them get together and work with all the user groups and everything, working through us. I want the input from some of the other members of the committee, not just me and these the people that want to do this with the trails. So would anybody have any objections to having just a committee specifically focused on trails?
I think it's a good idea. I would like to be on it.
Okay. I already have Brett and Cindy on the committee there, and Dave on the committee.
There's Lynn Goodnow, Marianne.
Now I saw her pop in here a little while
Okay.
ago.
Okay. Marianne, oh, what's her last name? You'd know, Margot.
Wojcicki.
Okay. And Bob Hatch.
Okay. So do we want to formalize this with a motion and a vote?
I'd like to motion that the Ware River Watershed Advisory Committee have a subcommittee that deals with trails.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
Trails, are you referring to horse trails, bike trails?
All trails.
Pardon?
All trails.
All trails.
Yeah. Because basically, if you remember, well, actually, you may not. We didn't get that far into the meetings before COVID hit. We really want to get more all-purpose trails, not have specific user group trails. So yeah, so we're concerned. We have Brett on the group, and of course he's NEMBA. So we really want to work on the trails of Ware River Watershed.
Dick, I think you bring up a great point, and I think the work of the committee will be to develop a charter that begins to flesh out exactly what the context of trails is, and be able to report back to the committee, certainly, you know, what they're looking at doing. I think this is a great idea because trails is a hot topic anywhere I go. And there is a broad variety of trails in this region. I can tell you that I was on a committee here in Barre to utilize town property to develop new trails. And it was fairly easy going out here, but it really kind of got me a lot closer to just how passionate different user groups are about their trails, and how exclusionary some people want to be about trail use. So I think it's a good fit. I welcome the subcommittee, pardon me.
And I really think this is a good thing as well. Again, I'd like to see us, I know we've been dealing with this public access plan. It's just been COVID kind of cut everything short. I'd like to get moving on some of these issues. There are quite a few trail issues that I think could be addressed, that we could make a recommendation on as a committee, but it really needs to be hashed out by people just focused on the trails, not all the other issues. So is there any other discussion? I have a motion and a second.
Jeff, through you, John, someday I'd like to talk to you. I'd like to be educated. The difference between recreation and the watershed, and because I'm a little nervous. DCR owns the rail trail, and it's the future that I'm a little concerned about. And I just like to have something in the future, because the rail trail goes to, you know, Wachusett side and not Ware River. That's why I'd like to maybe have a conversation with you on the rail trail sometime in the future.
You're talking about the Ware River Rail Trail, not the Mass Central.
That's the same thing.
No, they're two separate rail trails, though. And
Mass Central Rail Trail was created in 1994.
but the Ware River Rail Trail is different. I mean, they meet almost by the intake valve if the bridge was still there, but they are two separate entities. And
that's why I wanted to talk to John, because he's from the other side.
We certainly can have a conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, is this an opportunity for a member of the public to speak on this issue?
Absolutely.
So my name,
I have somebody, first of all, I don't want to interrupt you. I have somebody, Jody K-Plack.
actually, that's my wife. I'm using her computer tonight, so please
I was
forgive me.
just telling him you can unmute him.
Yeah.
Or her.
Jody is here tonight. She can attest that I'm her husband.
Okay.
And my name is Mark Kablak. We both live in New Braintree. I'm a frequent user of the trails and roads within the watershed from a recreational standpoint. And I have been, while this is my first time attending this council meeting, I have been for some time trying to get an update on the public access management plan, which was last published in 2010, and for which public input on a republication of the plan, I believe, was last conducted in 2018. So we're 3.5 years into the republication of this plan. I am interested in the process for what that might look like in the months ahead, COVID notwithstanding, and in particular on this issue of the council creating the subcommittee. I'd like to know if there's a way in which I or other members of the public can participate in that. For example, the 2010 plan has some emphasis that I think is outdated or inconsistent with the public policy of the watershed generally. And I think that now is the time to try to change some of that emphasis. And certainly the trail subcommittee can be a part of that. But it is really, I think my concern is more general in nature. And so I have two questions ultimately. One is the progress or lack thereof on the next edition of the public access plan. And second, whether there's a mechanism for I or others to participate in the subcommittee on trail access.
Well, the public access plan, at least at this point, I'll let DCR address it, but at this point has been put on hold due to the COVID situation. We did hold, it was in February of 2020, a fairly large meeting that had to be rescheduled because we had too many people in attendance, and we had to reschedule it to the Barry, in Barry, the Quabbin Regional School District Auditorium, because there were too many people for the venue that we had at the time, as the Rutland Public Library. But since then, we have not been able to do much of anything. Everything is on hold. Again, Dan, would you like to weigh in on it, or?
I'll defer to John and let him give you a summary.
Okay, John.
I think, as people know, we had been working with several of the user groups for quite a bit of time, as the committee had asked us to do, leading up to COVID at the beginning of 2020. At about the same time, we had a change in commissioner leadership at DCR, and our new commissioner wanted us to pause so that he could come up to speed. And that's when COVID happened. So we feel like it was hard to move forward without being able to have easy public discussions with people. So we're hoping to be able to move forward in the relatively short term and bring the plan back up. We've been working on some policy stuff internally. We unfortunately have a new commissioner who just started, an acting commissioner who just started back in December. So we have met with her a couple times to bring her up to speed. We're hoping the pandemic will allow us to be able to move forward maybe a little later this spring and be able to bring something back that will be the start of some more public discussion on the plan.
Thank you, John. Now, what was the other half of your question?
Yes, thank you. So the second part of it is
You wanted to see if you could participate in the committee.
well, whether I or others would have a means to participate either directly or indirectly with this effort, which I think is a very valuable one.
Well, I just had Dean, he has to do with snowmobiles, request to be in on it. Dean, can we unmute him?
Yep. You hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. So you would
You
be
need,
interested in being on the subcommittee as well?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure we're going to be, just as a note, dealing much with the actual Ware River Rail Trail, mostly because the snowmobilers, Colebrook, maintains that, etc. But maybe the best thing is if Mike and Dean could send us an email so that we track it. You can send it to me and I can send it to the subcommittee if you'd like to. Explain.
Not Cindy, I think it might be
I'd rather be on the
useful to
committee.
have the snowmobile end of things involved with that as well.
Okay.
They do a lot of trail maintenance already on their own trails, granted.
Right. Okay. In fact, if you could, Dean and Mike, if you could send an email with the description of what you see the trails, what you would like to see happen with the trails, etc. And if you want to, send it to me and we can contact you.
I'd be happy to do that, Cindy. First of all, just want to clarify, my name is Mark, not Mike.
Mark, sorry.
That's okay.
I'm thinking of Mike Wood. I'm staring. Okay.
And if you could just tell me what your email address is, I'll do
Now, do you know about the chat room?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I'll put it in the chat room.
Okay. So if you send it to Jody Kablack, which is how I'm registered, I'll see
Okay.
that.
No, I'm gonna send it, I'm putting my email address in the chat room of Zoom. So everyone who's interested can go to the chat room, and to go to the chat room, if you look at where our faces are, that dialog box, that picture,
Mhm.
okay, put your cursor at the bottom of it and you'll see more, 3 dots with more.
Yeah,
If you
no, I
click-
have it up. So as soon as you send that,
Okay, I just did. It's there. So you should see a chat,
Yep.
me to everyone with my email address. So if anyone's interested, like I said, please put a description of what you feel the trails are, I should say, what you feel the subcommittee should be doing about trails, etc.
So on this point, and it would be a worthwhile clarification for me and perhaps others, there was a little side discussion about the rail trail. A lot of what I consider to be trails within the watershed are sometimes referred to as roads. My layman's perspective and interest is all of it from a public access standpoint. Is the charge of this subcommittee similar, or are you just focusing on a subset of the access points into the watershed?
We are interested in pretty much all the trails. Now, certain trails like the Mass Central Rail Trail, there's already a group that maintains it, that interfaces with DCR, etc. So we would probably not be looking at that one. But there are so many miles of trails within DCR that need maintenance, maybe sometime workaround. So we're looking at nonprofit groups that would basically help us with, maintaining. Perhaps there are other things besides trails that need work in order to access trails. So that sort of thing.
I guess
We have to work on that.
my question is a little bit more pointed. So for example, the prisoner camp road, because there was a lot of discussion tonight about the historical significance of that feature. Is that camp road part of what you consider to be the subcommittee's charge?
We're not quite sure. We're still in formation. Usually the dirt roads are really DCR's purviews, but there are lots of cart roads, single track trails, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Can I chime in here?
Definitely.
Mark, to your point relative to getting input from outside the subcommittee, absolutely. Somehow we're going to do that. As Cindy mentioned, we've just had a few meetings and getting ourselves organized. And just at our last meeting, we briefly discussed engagement of outside inputs to the subcommittee, and we will definitely do that. The vehicle for that we haven't defined at this point, but we definitely will somehow publicize our meetings and probably have minutes of our meetings. We already do have minutes of our meetings, so we can publicize them and when our next meeting is scheduled. So if people want to come to a particular meeting, then they can do that.
Okay, fair enough. Well, thank you. I'll send an email to Cindy and hope to stay connected that way. Thank you.
Now, Dean.
Thanks, Mark.
Dean, you expressed an interest in it as well? Dean Zupio?
Yeah.
Okay, you got Cindy's email address?
Not yet.
Okay.
I'd rather be on the committee myself. I think I'd rather have direct input than be filtered by another user group.
Okay, I think I heard him.
Yeah.
Need an amendment?
My internet connection's unstable.
Yeah.
Jeff, if you have his email, maybe you could just forward him mine. I don't know if Dean, so I put my email address in the chat room.
I got it.
Okay.
Okay.
Could I ask a question, please?
Yes, sir.
Talk of trails, are we talking about designating current roads, and you mentioned cart roads and single tracks that are presently established, or adding perhaps single track trails to what's already there?
I think what we're talking about right now, Mike, is just trails in general. They may be adding, they may not, they may be talking about potentially closing some. At this point, they're just at the beginning stages.
Okay.
So I don't think it's that's at that stage yet, that's specific.
Could I be part of this group and to be kept aware of what's happening?
Mike, well, first of all, Paula has my email address, but as you well know, but anyhow, yeah, just send email to my email address and I will forward everything to the group.
Okay, so I would be just kept advised, I would be a member of the group.
It depends. One of the things we want to make sure is that we have a manageable size. So we have not really, what we're trying to do is get people who are interested as far as working with us, as far as, actually participating in the work, et cetera, to send an email with a vision of what they think the subcommittee should do, et cetera. And that's what I'd like sent to my email address.
Okay, okay, that's, I'll start with that.
Jeff, do you mind if I make a couple comments?
Absolutely.
Just first, sort of a gentle reminder. I think Cindy, you mentioned that the roads are under DCR's purview. I want just to remind everybody that everything's under DCR's purview. So the trails, the roads. So I just want to clarify that. I also
was thinking more for maintenance purposes.
Okay. My other point is, if you get to a point where you want to propose actually doing some work in the watershed, there is a process for that. So, and Dave Marsh and I have been working on, there's a formal agreement that is established between DCR and whether it's a specific organization or a group of people, and that delineates what kind of activities can take place, et cetera, et cetera. So I would just suggest, and Dave, I made this comment to Dave, it would be a lot easier for me if there was sort of a single entity that made that request to DCR to formalize this relationship, as opposed to trying to have a snowmobile request and a horseback riding request and a mountain biking request. If you could, it sounds like you're doing that through this subcommittee, sort of combine your interest into a single thing and make a single submission to DCR if and when that time comes. That would be my preference, I guess, just sort of putting that out there.
So Dan,
Sorry for that idea. That sounds great to me. Hope you can understand that.
I think Dave said that sounds great to him.
Dave, we still can't understand you.
But I was going to ask you, Dan, does that mean that the DCR could recognize this subcommittee as a entity for volunteer stewardship purposes?
Yeah, there's the form. I think the form is pretty, it's pretty open. I think you have to have, it can't be an individual, just, it's got to be some sort of organized group that has some structure to it. And then, you would submit the application, and Dave's done it already, he's familiar with it. And that's sort of the foundation for listing what type of activities you're interested in doing on the watershed. And that way it's sort of a single connection for, it's a lot easier for on my end to manage a single group as opposed to managing 5, 6, 7 different groups that probably all have very similar goals in mind.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'd also like to see it work through our committee too, so that we're kept in the loop. So,
Dan, would the subcommittee have to, if we wanted to be, I know we have a VSA, some type of VSA agreement. Would we have to form a nonprofit, or can we just be an informal group of which some of us are part of the Ware River Watershed Advisory Committee?
Well, actually, one of the questions on the application says, are you a nonprofit organization, yes or no? So that says to me, you don't have to be. So
Okay.
honestly, I've never done one of these before. I mentioned this to John. He was going to try and get some more input from state parks that do these all the time. So I think we'll probably have a little more information in the next couple of weeks, but it doesn't appear to me that you have to be a nonprofit.
Okay. Okay, great.
Okay. And again, this works into where I want to see the committee start to look at each of these individual issues that came up that have been arising, such as I just had the other day is Rusty out there? Is he still there? I know he joined our meeting a few minutes ago. Yeah, there he is. He had some concerns about the boating access on Long Pond, for instance.
Well, I've had a lot of concerns, and I don't want to take everyone's time to rehash old news. But in listening to your discussions about the trail subcommittee, I wonder if this is not worth considering doing something similar for the users of Long Pond, power boaters, fishermen, paddlers, etc.
I would I'd agree. I know we had done it in the past. That's how you and I first got when I first got on the committee. Maybe I would like to begin this discussion at another meeting. We'll schedule a new meeting, and we can bring you, Rusty, in. And my main concern has always been with the boat ramp just off of Route 122 in Barry, the canoe access there. There are other issues that really are just that are just still hanging there due to COVID or due to changes in who the commissioner is and so on and so forth. Would the rest of the committee be in favor of kind of looking at that, maybe creating subcommittees so that eventually we can make the recommendations to DCR?
Would it make sense, like the trail committee, to broaden it beyond Long Pond, to say within our geography here that the committee is interested in to do all water access points? Because I think one of the things, Rusty, that you mentioned, it's not only about boating, it's about fishing, it's about paddling, wherever there's an access. And does that also play to Dan Clark's point about single entity in terms of that approach? Or are you interested in only a committee for Long Pond?
Could I suggest something along those lines? One of my concerns is if you set up a subcommittee with an interest in trails, whether it's biking or horseback riding or snowmobiling, that it doesn't adversely impact other users, such as sportsmen and hunting, and that the implementation of or laying out of specific trails or the possibility of new trails adversely impacting their use. So if you're going to have a subcommittee regarding trails and your discussion about a subcommittee regarding water access, would you consider a subcommittee relative to hunters and sportsmen's access.
Again, I think we could begin this discussion, see where we can split off into different subcommittees, different groups, and come back so that we have some idea of a recommendation we can make as an advisory committee to DCR as to how we want things, how we look at things being done, how we want the policies to read, to include hunters, fishermen, paddlers, motorboaters, snowmobiles, so on and so forth. But we got to begin this discussion somewhere. And I think having splitting off into subcommittees will give us a better idea of where we want to go. And maybe give DCR a better idea of where they should be looking.
Does Mass Fish and Wildlife ever get involved in these meetings?
No.
But Jeff, the Ware River Watershed Advisory Committee is roughly 25% makeup of sportsman organizations, correct?
Right.
So all of the Trails Committee activity bubbles up into the Ware River Watershed Advisory Committee and doesn't go anywhere until it goes first.
Right.
Good.
Right.
Right. That's why I wanted to make sure that the committee realized it should ultimately they should the committee should come back to, or the subcommittee should come back to the Ware River Watershed Advisory Committee so that we can make our recommendation. And getting back to you, Rusty, we should be able to do the same thing for voters access. And I'm trying to think of some of the other issues that were created with the access plan.
Well, from my purview, it's pretty much boating access and usage of Long Pond. I'm not well connected with the sportsmen who get permits for use of a motorboat over 20-25 horsepower. And it would probably make sense if we go this route to establish some sort of a subcommittee that DCR assist us with connecting to that group of people through the permit list, so we can get some input from the essentially what I'm talking about is bass fishermen, a fisherman that use bass boats. If we're going to do something to address the issues that affect those of us with boats over 25 horsepower, that we have to include that group.
I would agree. So let's make sure it's this discussion is continued on the next agenda. It's 8:45. And I think we've already had a couple people drop off here. We'll put it on our next agenda to continue this discussion. When does everybody want to meet?
Jeff, could I move the question?
Move the question.
The creation of the Trails Subcommittee. Can we move on with that question?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. We didn't vote on it?
I don't think so. I think we're still in discussion.
I'm sorry.
No, there was no vote. It was just a motion and a second.
All right. Absolutely. All those in favor of the formation of the Trails Subcommittee? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. There. Now we took the vote.
Okay. Brett, I'm glad you remembered that we hadn't voted on it.
I'd forgotten that we didn't vote. Okay. This to me is weird doing this on the computer. So, but I'd like to take suggestions for our next meeting. When we can do it.
Do we want to do it towards the end of February, beginning of March?
I think that would be a good idea.
I assume because of COVID, it would still be another Zoom meeting.
I would say that's a safe bet at this point,
Yes.
unless suddenly everything goes away.
I don't think that's gonna
I
happen.
mean, I already had to do that thing in November that was kind of difficult, but
So do we want to do the, what day is best for us? Wednesday?
Thursdays.
Thursday.
We
Oh, today's
usually meet on
Thursday.
Thursdays.
I'm retired. Sorry.
I wish I was. I
Uh,
wish I was.
Okay,
Part of my reason for ending this so quickly is I gotta get up at 4:30 tomorrow.
okay, either the 24th or March 3rd.
Okay, let me get a calendar up here.
4th is good for me. The 3rd of March is not.
Same with me. The 24th is
Yeah.
good. The 3rd is
24th.
no.
24th of
Yeah.
February.
Okay,
No,
so we'll do the February 24th at 7, Jeff?
That sounds good with me.
Justin? Is that good for you to set up?
Yeah, I'm around. Yep.
Okay. Still showing daylight.
Thanks for checking. Yeah.
And we'll do it remotely again like this.
Please.
sorry, I got another meeting that night, Central Mass Regional,
Oh, who's
Oh.
this?
Dick Williams.
Oh.
March
Okay,
10th is option.
okay. How's March 10th? Folks,
Good.
Works for me.
Can do March 10th.
okay.
I'm on vacation that week, but I'm not that important. You know, you guys can do it. You can, I
As
think
long as long as you can send out, an email with the Zoom meeting and everything like that, that would be great.
yeah, I can. Yep, I'll make sure.
Okay.
And Dan, you can set us up and everything, correct?
Yep, we'll do the same thing we did tonight.
Okay, cool.
All right, so March 10th at 7?
Going once,
Before I hit
going
clock.
twice, anybody?
All right,
I think we got a date.
great.
Before you adjourn, can I ask either Dan or John what the plan is for Long Pond permit this year?
John, do you want to?
Rusty, I would assume not assume, because we have no change in plan, in our final plan, permits will happen as usual.
But you guys were very generous last year as far as, I assume, issuing more than the prescribed 50. Can I expect that would be, you do something similar this year?
Rusty, as you know, it's been more than the prescribed 50 for a long time.
Yes, sir.
Part of my problem is when you set a number, keep the number.
Can you see me applauding here? Can you see that?
But my point, Rusty, is we would not, even though 50 was the number that was given, years ago, we wouldn't make any changes to what we're doing currently until we're putting forth a new final plan.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that, and I'll relay that to the people that are asking me.
Jeff,
Okay.
through Jeff to John, one thing. John, planning board, I happen to see Long Pond is having 2 boat ramps put in, but I didn't see DCR's name on the plan.
No. So the boat ramp at Long Pond was built by the Office of Fishing and Boating Access, and they're proposing a redesign of that ramp, an improvement of that ramp.
And I believe it's coming before us in the next couple of weeks.
It could be.
I didn't see DCR's name on it, and I just want to make sure that that's okay.
Yeah, no, the
We're
Office of
aware.
Fish and Boating Access is actually part of Fish and Wildlife. And they have been responsible for development of boat ramps across the state for decades, actually.
Okay,
So they're coming in proposing improvements to that ramp.
very good. Thank you.
Okay. There being nothing more, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Third, I'm ready for dinner.
All right, all those in favor of adjourning?
Bye.
I
Thank you,
Great.
everybody, for
Thank you
attending.
all.